On July 17, 1996, TWA Flight 800 took off from JFK Airport. 12 minutes later, it blew up in midair. The accident was officially attributed to the explosion of fuel vapors in an empty center fuel tank. The problem is, that hasn't happened before or since on a Boeing 747. Is there more to this story than we've been told? Let's dive in. And before you start watching this, please subscribe, it really makes a difference. Number 10. The Mystery Object. Jim Holtzclaw was the former air traffic control manager for American Airlines. About a month after Flight 800 went down, he received a copy of the radar tape recorded in New York City the night Flight 800 crashed off the coast of Long Island. It showed a primary target at the speed of approximately 1,200 knots, converging with Flight 800 during its climb-out phase. MSNBC had been on the air for 2 days and aired an amateur video that showed an object approaching the plane. A week later, the video was pulled and has not been seen or heard of since. MSNBC wasn't the only media outlet to report this before walking it back. On July 19th, CNN reported that radar records reviewed by military officials showed a mystery blip in the vicinity of TWA's flight path. What was this mystery object? Number 9. The CIA film. For some inexplicable reason, the CIA was brought in to interview the hundreds of eyewitnesses who saw a missile hit the plane that night. When the FBI was announcing the end of their criminal probe at a news conference, they played a tape that was produced by the CIA. In this film, the CIA claimed that the missile that everyone saw was actually the plane itself. After exploding in mid-air, the CIA alleged that the aircraft then pitched upwards and continued to climb from 13,800 feet to an altitude of 17,000 feet. The narrator says the reason why it kept going up was the loss of weight caused the craft to turn up and climb. Aviation experts who have reviewed this claim say there's just one problem: a force called gravity. Without wings to provide lift, there's simply no way the plane could have continued climbing upward after the explosion. Number 8. Witnesses ignored. Mike Wire was working on a bridge in West Hampton, Long Island the night the flight went down. He saw a white light travel upwards from the ground, zigzag, and then at its apex it arched over and disappeared from view. A few seconds later, he saw a fireball and then heard 4 explosions. Known as Witness 571, the FBI immediately interviewed him. In the official NTSB report, however, they said that Witness 571 changed his story in subsequent interviews. But that was a lie. No one had came to interview him a second time. The same thing happened with Witness 77, who worked in the travel industry and had a long-standing interest in aviation. She tracked the plane and the flare as 2 separate objects. No one came to talk to her again either. And in the official NTSB report, they said she had drank 2 Long Island iced teas that evening, discrediting her testimony. The problem is, Witness 77 never drank. Number 7. Media bias. From the beginning, the New York Times dominated coverage of TWA Flight 800, and the FBI gave all of their breaking news to the New York Times. After the FBI's final news conference, the Times ran an op-ed praising the FBI for its admirable thoroughness and openness. But consider this: the New York Times chose not to interview any of the 250-plus witnesses who saw a light approaching Flight 800 before it exploded. Mere coincidence? Another big red flag was a comment made by George Stephanopoulos. During an interview with Peter Jennings, he said that there was a second, more secure White House Situation Room that few people know about. During his time in the White House, he said it was used twice, in the aftermath of the OKC bombing and the TWA Flight 800 bombing. Why didn't anyone in the media follow up on this shocking admission? Number 6. The amateur video. Remember we told you about an amateur video that aired on MSNBC? Well, it turns out that according to a young journalist intern who was working there at the time, that evening 3 men in suits came into the editing suite and demanded every copy of the video and said there would be serious consequences should anyone talk about the video or air it again. but someone did see it. A 747 pilot named Donald Young, who was watching in Hong Kong on the local news, he saw a videotape of people hanging out facing the water. Then you could see a streak of light accelerating as it climbed. The video disappeared, but Donald had no doubt it was a missile. That's because Donald worked at Boeing in its Space and Strategic Missile System division. His job was to review videotapes of missile launches, and when he returned to the US, he never saw that footage again. Number 5. The spark in the tank. The official explanation for TWA Flight 800's demise was a spark in the center fuel tank. But consider that more than 20 years after the crash, the FAA has not required any remedial action on the center fuel tank of the 747s. This becomes even more glaring when you consider that Air Force One itself is a Boeing 747. Also, there's never been a comparable explosion like that before, and there hasn't been one since. Even worse, when they finally did recover TWA 800's fuel pumps, they found that there was no problem with their structural integrity. In fact, at the end of this investigation and to this day, the NTSB will admit that they never actually did find an ignition source. Number 4. The Iranian Attack. In the book Accident or Incident, Kevin Reddy and Kat Parlier make a plausible case that a surface-to-air missile fired from an Iranian ship took down the plane that evening. The motive, they say, was the US Navy's accidental shoot-down of an Iranian Airbus back in July of 1988. In fact, a 2013 CNN special report made the case that the White House thought that Iran was the leading suspect. Think about the timing. A US airliner blown out of the sky just 2 days before the start of the Olympics in Atlanta? Authorities also have been unable to explain a mystery vessel that was 3 miles away from TWA 800 when it exploded in the sky. Even weirder, the captain immediately fled the scene at between 25 and 35 knots instead of circling back to see if there were any survivors. The FBI to this day has been unable to identify that mystery vessel. Number 3. Explosive residue. Front page of the New York Times, August 23, 1997, says evidence has found a device exploded in the cabin of TWA 800. Investigators had found PETN, a component commonly found in bombs. Investigators at the ATF and also at a local FBI lab in Long Island found residue consistent with an explosive, but in both cases, when they were tested at the FBI labs in Washington, D.C., the results were not conclusive. Investigators also found RDX residue. Together with PETN, those are the prime ingredients of Semtex, which is a plastic explosive and a favorite of terrorist bombers. A month later, the cause was officially declared mechanical failure, and the next day the FBI released a statement explaining that the Semtex was on the plane because a bomb-sniffing dog exercise had been done by the St. Louis police. Problem is, they don't use Semtex. Number 2. The missing parts. Senior NTSB investigator Hank Hughes was working at the hangar where Flight 800 was being reconstructed. He says that parts from the airplane just went missing. Whole seats just vanished. At one point, he set up a video surveillance system that saw 2 FBI agents in the hangar without authorization at 3 a.m. On another occasion, an FBI agent was flattening out a piece of metal with a hammer. Another TWA senior manager was also working at the NTSB at that time and had his own suspicions. He saw that there was a reddish-orange residue trail across 2 rows of nearby seats. He cut out a piece and sent it to an independent lab on the West Coast. The results were consistent with the exhaust residue of a solid fuel missile. And Terry Stacy knew a bit about TWA 800 because he was the pilot that had flown the 747 in from Paris the day before it exploded. The government ended up prosecuting him for stealing evidence. Number 1. A Navy cover-up. On the night of July 17th, a Navy P-3 was doing some practice runs off the coast of Long Island. The P-3 is a highly sophisticated anti-submarine warfare patrol aircraft, and it happened to be right over TWA 800 when it exploded. The captain of the P-3 said the closest ship to the explosion was the USS Normandy, about 185 miles to the southwest. Those coordinates put the ship off the coast of Wallops Island, a NASA facility and a rocket testing range. And on the night TWA 800 went down, An American airline captain reported that they saw a missile ascend from Wallops Island. Another question, if Washington suspected foul play, why did they send the highly sophisticated P-3 away from the crash site to continue its training, and why was its transponder turned off? One clue might be found in Executive Order 13039. On March 11, 1997, Clinton signed an executive order removing all whistleblower protection from anyone associated with U.S. Navy Special Warfare Ops. That would include any Navy divers charged with moving the black boxes. And by the way, when reviewing the black box audio experts say 2 seconds were deleted from the tape. Nothing to see here, folks. We hope you enjoyed this list, and please subscribe and join our growing Decagon community.